Okay. Dear participants, I welcome you all on behalf of our organization, Progotir Jatree. I am very happy to have all of you here on this Zoom discussion. You already know the United Nations Ecosystem Restoration Decade of 2021 to 2030 aims to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal linked with climate change, food security, and poverty reduction. Here, in this connection, forests play an important part to support livelihoods and food supply, and obviously, it is an integral part of the carbon cycle. We must protect our forest for our children and grandchildren, and for those who cannot speak for themselves, such as birds, animals, and fish. We, the people, should have to take the responsibility to prevent degradation, protect deforestation of forests for the betterment of the future generation. In Nepal, community forestry has a vital role to improve forest conditions through better management measures involving the local community. Livelihoods of the community people are also improved through forest management. Our aim as an organization, Progotir Jatree, to learn from different countries and use those learnings in our practices, develop networks among the practitioners, and share ideas and views. As part of the process, Prabodhi Jatri has organized its second virtual discussion on role of forest management to reverse ecosystem learnings from community forests of Nepal. Prabin Bhusal, Assistant Professor, Institute of Forestry, Pokhara campus, Nepal, will present the topic to in front of us. You know, the pandemic situation has taken a lot lives, free movement, in-person discussion, and many more. But during this period, we have got an opportunity to meet virtually, discuss and share, which is less expensive than earlier. We are becoming habituated with the new normal life. Dear participants, I would like to request Dr. Pushpa Parekh. Uh, she is the Director, African Diaspora and the Worldwide, Professor, English Department, Spelman College, Atlanta, to deliver the opening speech. Dr. Pushpa, I would like to request you to deliver the speech.
I forget to unmute myself. So thank you very much, Mr. Datta, and everybody who's present here. It's my pleasure to talk a few minutes before the main speaker. I'm waiting to hear Dr. Bhusal's talk, so I won't take up too much time. I just want to say that I'm professor of English, and I also direct the interdisciplinary program on African diaspora in the world at Spelman College, which is a historically Black women's college. And I'm so proud to have my student here, Miss Aren. You can wave if you are present. And yeah, so nice to see you. And I just want to say I'm at heart a learner, even though, you know, people call me professor. I'm always learning from my students, particularly students who engage with issues of concern all over the world. And Aren is one of them. We've had several discussions about topics, and I just want to say this is how we grow. We learn from each other, we interact, and we want to have spaces of interaction with both the environment and with each other in a way that sustains everybody. So I'm here to just say a few words, like I said, to talk about environmental humanism, which is a very important component of environmental justice, or in fact, any form of social justice, because so many other um, ecosystems are connected with this. For example, health disparities is a big concern among our communities. And I speak of Spelman, um, courses and students and engagement with activism as much as with academics. So one of the things I teach in my courses in English as well as in ADW program is about decolonizing, and integrating structural transformations. Because unless we look at these inequities as structural, we're going to be just simply dealing, in a very superficial way with these issues. So that's my approach, and I want to acknowledge that Aren, my student, has been engaged as an activist with the Detroit water crisis, and she has much to share later during the Q&A. I'm sure she will have questions of her own, but she's a young activist, and I want to always say my accolades to the young activists who are bringing us to a place where we can all be alive, sustainable, and we can actually promote these causes worldwide. So I just want to say hello to all of you in that spirit, and welcome, Dr. Bhusal, as you will say, Mr. Datta.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Parekh, for your nice statement. Now we have to go to our presentation, but before that, I would like to just tell the how it will go. First of all, Mr. Prabin will present his presentation, PowerPoint presentation, and explain 20 to 25 minutes. Then question and answer session will start. So before going to Praveen, I would like to request my colleague here, Kausar Parvin, to give a short introduction of Mr. Prabin Bhusal, Professor Prabin Bhusal. Kausar, can you hear me? Please introduce Mr. Prabin Bhusal here.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kausar Parveen from Chittagong, Bangladesh. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker, who is going to talk to us about the role of forest management to reverse ecosystem. It's a topic in which we all are deeply interested, as achieving sustainable forest management will provide integrated benefits to all, ranging from safeguarding local livelihoods to protecting biodiversity and ecosystems provided by forests, reducing rural poverty and mitigating some of the effects of climate change. We are much honored to have Mr. Prabin Bhusal as the respected speaker for today's event. Mr. Prabin Bhusal is an assistant professor in natural resource management at the Institute of Forestry, Pokhara campus, Tribhuvan University, Nepal. Is over 8 years of research and teaching experience in forest governance and policy. His work integrates academic teaching, applied research, and publication. Mr. Bhusal teaches Master and Bachelor Forestry and NRM subjects, including forest governance, policy, and natural resource conflict management. He has published more than 2,000 papers on forest governance and policy issues and led half a dozen research projects. He has received several national and international awards and grants, including the Early Career Scientist Grant 2019 from Technical University Dresden, Germany, and Gregory Award 2017 from Society of American Foresters, SIF, USA. Mr. Bhusal's research interests include community-based natural resource management, public policy, forest policy and practice, institution, and forest governance. We are much grateful to Mr. Bhusal for accepting our invitation and becoming the honored speaker of today's topic, Role of Forest Management to Reverse Ecosystem, Learning from Community Forests of Nepal. I, on behalf of Progotir Jatree, am pleased to welcome Mr. Prabin Bhusal. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Prabin Bhusal. Mr.
Yes,
Prabin Bhusal, please.
Okay.
Prabin.
Thank you very much. So, Utpal, you have to share the presentation.
Yeah, I will do it.
So first, I want to welcome you all in today's presentation. It's my pleasure to meet with you all in this great platform of learning and sharing. Thank you, Kaushal, for a wonderful introduction, and Utpal and his organization for this opportunity. Okay, so Utpal,
Yes.
you have to share the presentation.
Yeah.
Is it big? Okay.
Yeah.
So you can make it full screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So this is the photo from the mid hills of Nepal. The households of community is surrounded by the forest. So we have community and forest around that combines community forestry. Okay, today I'll be talking on two perspectives here. So in revising the forest ecosystem, how we build the community-based institution, and what were the fundamentals to build such institutions that were able to revive the forest through community-based forest management in Nepal. And overall, that in terms of output, we have revived ecosystem. Okay, you can move to next slide. So basically, community forestry, it is one of the participatory forest management models that is in practice globally nowadays. So it was we are lucky to be lucky to be the pioneer country to start with this concept, participatory forestry involving people in forest management. So if you look in the spectrum of community-based forest management regimes, then the community forestry practice demands and have the full devolution of rights with the communities. So they have there is the group of people involving in forest management. They have full or partial rights over a specific forest area. The rights including the establishment of user groups, implementation of forest management activities, utilization of resources, and utilization of the income gained from managing the resources. So if we look globally, the community forestry that we practiced, we initiated in Nepal in 1970s, and now we have around 50 years of experience of community forestry. So that is the practice with full devolution of rights from the central government to local community people. So we moved from very protected oriented state managed forest to active and community based forest management. Okay. So if we look to several literatures and researches, for as a basic elements of community forestry, you should have some elements that should govern the institution and the governance process. The first one is the autonomous institution. The community forest user groups should be the autonomous body. They should have the rights to decide by themselves through the groups. And obviously the well-defined forest area and well-defined users that are granted with the forest management rights, make them well functional. So that is another elements that should guide the participatory forestry. The forest management and use rights, that govern the security of forest management. If we provide with the rights to the community, rights to the user groups, then that will provide them the ownership towards that forest. So it will basically provide the tenure security. Similarly, the community forestry user groups or the participatory forestry should have some plans. We call it in Nepal the operational plans, forest management plans, so that they have that plan, and the plan guides how they can manage their forest and how the community can be managed. The social inclusion and participatory involvement of all the people. So if you look in the community, then we have heterogeneous community, including in terms of class, in terms of religion, in terms of city, in terms of forest dependency. The community is heterogeneous. So we have people with poor households, the rich households, people of different class. If we institutionalize them in a participatory process, then it can work very effectively. So in terms of that spirit, one of the elements of community forestry is social inclusion and participatory governance. Obviously, the equitable benefit sharing have very important role in terms of building collective action in community forestry. So overall, the outcomes at the end, we should look on the outcomes. So the forest management, if it can address the issues of livelihood of local people and the issues of forest restoration, then it can move sustainably ahead. So these are a few elements of community forestry, and based on these guiding elements, our community forestry works. Okay. In terms of legal and institutional foundation of community forestry in Nepal, so if we look at the community forest user groups, we basically thought on the user group concept. So user group is a community group registered for the management and utilization of community forest. So what happens is the local people themselves identify the forest users, the forest users who are who depends on that forest and are the traditional forest users. And they themselves identify the group of households who are eligible to be users, and they form a user group committee from their community members, community numbers. So that user group committee is a functional body to execute the community forest user groups work plan and forest management activities. I will later explain how it functions. But community forest user groups are so self-formed local institutions comprising of the households of different hamlets. Different hamlets come together and share their need and interest and their aspiration to form a user group. And based on that need, interest, and aspiration, the Division Forest Office have rights to hand over any part of the national forest to user groups in the form of community forest user groups. So they have, after registration as a community forest user groups, they got the rights to develop, conserve, use, and manage the forest patch they get from the Division Forest Office of Community Forestry. They equally have the rights to sell and distribute the forest products independently by fixing the price of the forest products through user groups committee and user groups decisions. Basically, they have approved operational plan. Two documents guides community forest user groups. One is forest operation plans. The forest operation plans talks about forest management activities, talks about the biophysical context of the forest. So we calculated forest productivity, annual allowable harvest, how much timber the community forest user group can harvest annually, how much fuel wood and other non-timber forest product they can harvest. So all these planning is done through operational plan, and they have to implement that operational plan. And we usually make 5 to 10 years of plan, and after 5 to 10 years we have to revise those operation plan. And to actually guide and execute and maintain the institutional and governance mechanism of responsibility of user groups and user groups committees and individual users households. So the constitution of community forest user group guides the community functions and roles, and the operation plan guides forest management activities. So we have these two legal binding document. So in terms of rights and institutional mechanism, community forest user group is a autonomous and corporate body. Okay, Utpal, next slide. So in terms of rights, so I have mentioned that we have devolved the forest management rights to the user groups up to the community level. So they have two types of rights. One is operational level rights, and next is collective choice rights. So operational level rights, we have two basic rights, the rights of access and withdrawal of forest products. And collective choice rights talks about forest management rights, exclusion rights, and alienation rights. So in terms of tenure security, these all rights provide a sense of security to the community forest user groups and make them autonomous and independent body. So they have, the group of users through General Assembly can make their decisions on forest management and user group management. Okay, next slide. So in this slide, I want to explain a little bit about how community forest formation and implementation process actually happens. So if a community who wants to become a community forest user groups, then first that community should identify the probable hamlets and the households that we call the users. So households of users who are interested to become a member of community forest user groups. So there are distinct characteristics that users should have to be the member of community forest user groups. One is they should have some kind of forest dependency. Then they should have some interest on managing that forest. And another is this should be the traditional users of that respective forest. And we also consider the distance to the forest. We usually give preference to the nearby users who resides around forest and have easy access to that forest. So based on that criteria, the community themselves identify and categorize a user group. And after that identification, the sensitization process happens. So it meaning that the forest technician, forest officials, who are responsible to manage and facilitate that forest. They bring different sort of programs to sensitize user groups who are interested to become a community forest user groups on the current policies, their roles and responsibility in forest management, the rights, what they have to do in developing the operation plan, how they have to function that operation plan, execute the plans, and do forest management activities. This sensitization process happens like that. And in second step, after identification and sensitization, the user group formation and registration process happens. The user group formation and registration process is also a constitution making process. We have a document of constitution where the roles and responsibility of user groups are written, and both parties, the government, from government side, division forest office, which we have now 77 districts, and in each districts we have division forest office and subdivision forest offices. So that division forest offices facilitates the user group registration and formation process, both technically and socially. So in this user group formation process, we develop the constitution of user group, and both the division forest office from government side and the community forest user group executive committee from community forest user group side, both they agree on the constitution, roles and responsibility of user group, and develop a constitution. After they have a constitution, then we start developing forest operational plan that basically talks about what is the size of the forest, what are the existing forest resources, all the biophysical context of the forest, what silviculture intervention can be implemented based on the forest type. We actually we have 3 geographical regions: the lowland Tarai, where we have subtropical hardwood forest. Then we have the mid hills regions, and we have very high Himalayan region. So in 3 distinct regions, we have different forest types. Based on that forest types, the operation plans are prepared. Then we have user group, community forest user group. They have their constitution, they have forest operation plan, which should be rectified and legally passed through the division forest office. Technically, they will rectify it and hand over that operation plan to community forest user group. Then after preparing the operation plans, then the community forest user groups are formally handed over. Then they start implementing that forest operational plan. Usually we develop 10 years plan of forest operation plan, and after implementation of forest operation plan through the registered community forest user groups, in each 10 years, now we do revision of that operation plans. The basic assumption is within 10 years, there will be some changes in the biophysical context of the forest. Equally, there will be some change in the need and interest of community forest user group. So to address that change, we revise and amend operation plan and community forest user group constitution. So this is the basic process, how the community forest user groups are formed and how they implement forest management and community-based activities. Okay, so there are also different stakeholders which I have demonstrated in this figure. So basically, the community forest user groups, who is the local level institution to manage forest. They have forest operation plan and constitution as a legal binding document. They have rights to manage, rights to withdraw forest resources, right to sell the forest resources, and get revenue, and they have to invest that revenue in different activities. So government have allocated how they have to invest that generated revenue. For instance, 25% of the annual income they generate from sale of forest products, and they also have other different income sources. They have to invest 25% of their annual income in forest management activities, and about 40% of the income is invested in community development activities. So they can invest in building different community-based infrastructure, in building roads, in irrigation, in water system, in community building, supporting different community institutions like schools, health posts. So these are some example of community-based activities where community forest user group invest. Equally, they have to invest in building a leadership and empowerment activities of poor, Dalit, marginalized, and women groups. So these the 25%, 40%, and remaining amount, they have to invest in these different activities, so that both the livelihood aspect of community is addressed and the forest management need is also addressed. So this is the mandatory thing they have to do, and it is well mentioned in the policies, forest policies. So as a functional unit, the community forest user group, as I already mentioned, they form an executive committee from their total number. They have around 15 to 20 executive committee led by chairperson and other members. And that executive committee should be inclusive and gender friendly. So recent policy has mentioned that at least 50% of executive committee member should be women, and within two major leadership posts like the chairman, vice chairman, treasury, within these posts at least one should be woman in this leadership post. So this is also mandatory provision to actually address the inclusive and gender friendly gender inclusion issues. So the different institutions I have shown in boxes, so I'll read it. The Ministry of Forest and Environment, MOFE is Ministry of Forest and Environment, Department of Forest, Division Forest Office, local government and development agencies, market, NGOs and project, and we also have a very strong Federation of Community Forest User Group. We call it FECO Fund. So these all institutions and organizations have their own role and functions in executing the forest management activities of community forest user groups. But basically, as a functional unit, community forest user group have an executive committee. The executive committee execute day-to-day activities as mentioned by the forest operational plan. And the bold color, bold arrow, like you can see in DFO. So they have very direct relation with the Division Forest Office. Division Forest Office is legally responsible to facilitate technical facilitation of community forest user group. So they regularly visit community forest user groups. They talk, discuss with those groups. They monitor how community forest user groups is executing the forest operational plan. If there is any difficulty, if there is any technical problem, then they facilitates community forest user groups and ensure that the community forest user group is functioning very well. Yeah. Next slide. In these few slides, I have shown the fundamental institutional and governance perspective of community forest user groups that we are adopting. And these are the very strong legal and institutional foundation of community forestry, the participatory forestry model that Nepal started in 1970s, formally from 1990s, have a very successful outcomes. So that fundamental the characteristics had made Nepal community forestry success. So the last 40 years of our community forest experience has given us several outcomes. One of the major outcomes is it is a unique modality of ecosystem restoration and ecosystem management. So now community forestry has become government major program with strong legal and institutional foundation. We have more than 22,000 community forest user groups across Nepal. So in terms of forest cover, around 45% of total land is covered by forest, and out of that 45%, 30% is under community-based forest management. Around 35% of total populations are directly involved in community forest management through community forest user groups across Nepal. So it's a national program, and it's a very successful programs in revising forest ecosystem. So we have very substantial achievements in regenerating our degraded hills. If you have read the very renowned book from World Bank, the Himalayan Crisis, they have published in 1990. They have the book revealed that the degradation and deforestation in Nepal in 1970s to 1990 will convert it to desert. On that conclusion, we started that is also one of the basic evidence that actually developed the crisis discourse in Nepal, and we to address that crisis, we initiated participatory forestry, the community forestry model. Now, all the degraded hills in the mid-hills of Nepal are revived. They are regenerating. We have very lush green forest. Forest productivity is increasing. We have plenty of timber and fuel wood and other non-timber forest products that we can harvest annually for that contribute to national economy and people livelihood. And several community-based infrastructures have been developed through the income of community forest. Equally, there are several social services, empowerment activities, and livelihood benefits generated from community forest management. Okay, next slide. So these are some of the key achievements. As I already explained about livelihood and food security, the reviving forest development, the capacity of local poor, Dalit, marginalized groups has been immensely developed. So now the women who were very afraid to come forward and talk in the groups, in the community, now they are leader of community forest user groups. Even the leader from community forest user groups represent the local level government. So we recently in 2015 we had the election of local government, and in many of the local government positions we have women leaderships. And if we look the women's background, they have somehow connected in community forest user groups. So that is how we actually institutionalize the capacity of community households who were who were in the lower side of the community. So it is a very good example of local inclusive democracy. In the community forest user group leadership, in around 22,000 community forest user groups, I think around 20% of user groups are led by women, and in each community forest user group executive committee, 50% of members are women members. Also, we have to include Dalits and other marginalized groups in leadership position. So this is how a legally binding process institutionalize the social problem and address it through natural resource management. So in this perspective, we can see how ecosystem is connected with livelihood, the human dimension. So you have to understand this perspective as well. So the emerging issue of climate change adaptation and mitigation, so is also addressed through community forest. Actually, forest is a mitigation strategy, and the resources, the livelihood benefits, the income from community forest user groups can be directly invested in adaptation activities. Even the revised ecosystem, the Forest Benefits Act as the adaptation measures. So this is all connected. So we call it the revised of ecosystem. Okay. So you can look in this figure. In 1970s, the hill in Jiri, it's in the eastern part of the Nepal. In 1970s and in 2000. So you can see the differences of ecosystem revitalization. Okay, we have also next figure. So it is Dada Fakar in the central Nepal. So this is the middle region, the hills in the central Nepal in 1975 and in 2005. So you can distinctly see the changes, and this is happening all over Nepal. Yeah, I think this is my last slide. So I'm trying to summarize how the conducive environment and intervention actually improved our ecosystem and created different benefits to community and forest ecosystem. So we started with the supportive policies, building institutions, and developing different services, local services, through user group formation, handover of forest with bundle of rights to the community who actually depends on that forest. Actually, our farming and forestry system is interlinked. So we are agriculture dependent society, and agriculture and forest have very close relations. So the forest, which is the home of the community, we handed over that forest to those community who need it, but we develop some rules to govern their activities. So in that process, the institutional strengthening and community empowerment actually automatically happened, and these all supportive policy and institution building process became conducive for collective and participatory action in managing the degraded forest. So we revised the action of forest deforestation and degradation to the participatory forest management through collective action process. And how this collective action process happens is through supportive policies and institution building processes. We made realize to the community that this is your forest. Government is only facilitating and trying to give you technical support. So these all conducive environment actually help us to improve our ecosystem and generated different associated benefits. So now we have recovered forest, we have availability of forest products, our ecosystem is improved. Around 50% of our land is covered by forest, and we have generated enough revenue, and we can invest that revenue back to those community who are managing forest. So the institution process is also helping in maintaining the biophysical ecosystem. So this is how we tried, we practiced with the participatory forestry, and now after 40 years, even 50 years of this community-based forest management experience and learnings, we can proudly say that our approach on participatory forestry has worked very successfully, and we are one of the example in the world in actually developing these community-based forest management. I think I will end my this formal presentation here, and would like to listen your comments, your questions, and any sharings if you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabin, for your nice presentation on community forestry of Nepal. The people here gathered, I must say that they might have interest on Nepal more and more. Uh, and at the end of the October, COP26 will be held on Glasgow. So it is very important, this climate change issues and how forestry contributes to um, climate change issues. So Nepal is a good example for us. So I again thank you too. Uh, I will open the floor for the participants for their questions and comments. Please ask your questions and comments, introducing yourself first, then ask the question. And again, we can continue it up to more 30 minutes. So please watch your watch to so try to limit your time. Floor is open for all. Please.
Could I just ask a
Yes.
comment? I wanted to say thank you very much, Dr. Bhusal, for an excellent presentation. I really appreciate knowing how inclusive the community forestry organization is, just in terms of including Dalits and women and marginalized groups. So I was wondering if there is something you can recommend for if I want to include that in my program. I do consider books, videos, and other multimedia formats. So if you can send me something, you don't have to, if you can recommend right now, that's fine. But if you have some resources, please share. Thank you.
Thank you. Prabin.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, I think Utpal have my email. You can share my email.
Yes.
So, yeah, I can share some resources, some materials for you on how you can address the issues of Dalits and marginalized and women, and actually bring it in your teaching learning process.
Thank you. Aren, I think you raised your hand. Then Shams.
I was second. I don't mind waiting if
Uh,
you want to take it first.
okay. Then Shams can.
Okay. Thank you, Dada. And Thank you, Prabin Bhusal, for your nice presentation. Yeah, we know Nepal is pioneer for community forestry in the region. I think in the world as a whole, we from a presentation we have got some impression regarding the community forest in your country. But it would be good if you just kindly just mention as community forestry is a long-term activities in your country, and the community forest users are working for a long time. It would be good just to mention some indicators so that we can understand the sustainability of the community forest users. Thank you.
Thank you. Shams, can you introduce yourself a little bit? What are you doing? What?
Okay, thank you, Dada. This is Uddin. Currently I am working for U.S. Forest Service in Bangladesh for Compass program, and yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Shams. Shams is what? Shams, actually, we work together in Bangladesh also with one project funded by USAID. Shams is now working with US Forest Service. He is a forester. So one word actually I want to explain to others. Dada, he called me. Dada means elder brother here. So in Bangladesh or India, in Nepal also, I think we call Dada to the elder brother also. So the people from here uh, can understand what is Dada. So now, Aren, right? Am I pronouncing
Yes,
rightly? Okay.
yes, you are. Thank you.
Okay.
I really appreciated this presentation. It was so informative. I was wondering if you had any recommendations of like podcasts, which is in line with what Dr. Parekh was asking in terms of literature to be shared. So I was just wondering if you had any additional content that you would recommend. I would love to learn more. And then outside of that request, I was curious about the literacy training. Is the literacy training and the curriculum of that, is that updated regularly? I'm just curious to know if it falls in line with like, more of the climate change issues.
Okay. Thank you, Aren. So also thanks to Sams for the questions. So both the questions are very very genuine questions. So first, I will share something on the sustainability issue. So basically, community forest user groups once handed over. Once the division forest office, the government representative who is responsible to manage the forest, once they hand over the forest to the community, then in certain cases, that is if they find any illegal activities that is going to harm whole forest ecosystem, then they can allot that community forestry and have rights to take back that community forest in that only one case. But if community forest user groups is working based on the plan they have and the rights they get, then it goes for the long time. We call it it's a perpetual succession policy. So it transfer from one generation to another generation. So we have now 50 years of community forest user group experience. And my father now is a member of community forest user groups. After my father, then the rights of that user group come to me. And after myself, it transferred to my son. So it transferred from one generation to another generation. So these all things and the rights we actually devolved to the community forest user groups. They act as a self institution, corporate body, corporate house. They have all rights to manage that forest, manage the income from the forest. Only one thing government want to ensure is they have to follow the forest management plan, and that forest management plan is also developed by themselves. The forest technician only facilitate the technical process, so they have to identify what is issues in their forest, what activities they can actually do in their forest in terms of forest management activities. Actually, they have to do basic three things. They have to do forest management, regular forest tending and forest growing operation. And they have to carry regular forest silviculture activities. They have to harvest forest products based on the amount calculated by forest technician as mentioned in the forest operation plan. So these all things actually is done to develop the very strong local level forest institution that can survive from generation to generation. So in that aspect, we are trying to address the sustainability issue. The Aren issue on can you actually share your
Aren, again.
Yeah, so I just was curious about the curriculum that comprises of the literacy training.
Literacy training, right? Yes. Curriculum and literacy training. Prabin, cannot hear you. Prabin, sound.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
Is it fine?
Fine.
Okay.
Fine.
So in terms of leadership development, basically we have two approaches. One is we do regular training, capacity building activities to different groups that demand leadership activities or leadership opportunities. The community forest user groups, they regularly organize those activities. For instance, they do different skill development trainings to women groups, different leadership and advocacy trainings to youth, and other different skill development trainings to youths. It basically happens based on their demand. The community forest user groups, they meet together once a year, and they share all of their activities they did in a year. They do reflection on their success, on their failure, and they listen the need and interest of their user groups. Based on that need and interest, they organize different leadership training and empowerment activities. That is one approach. And another approach is we are trying to institutionalize the issues of leadership or issues of people who are in marginalized groups, issues of women, Dalits, and marginalized groups through the process of community forest user group executive committee. We bring those people in marginal, who are in marginal, to the executive committee, to the leadership position, meaning that we are trying to give them opportunity to develop their leadership through community forest user group process. For instance, the woman member who is very backwarded and cannot speak in groups, we identify those women groups, and our policy also encourages us to actually include 50% of women in executive committee. So we give opportunity to those women who are marginalized to come in leadership position, and within that leadership position, they slowly and continuously build their leadership through the community forest user groups executive committee process. Actually, executive committee organize a meeting once a month. They have to regularly connected with division forest office and different other NGOs and other organizations working around forest management. So in that process, they connected with resources, they connected with the people working around forestry, and in that process, that is also the process to develop leadership. So we actually adopt these two perspectives, two approaches. Yeah.
One actually question from my side regarding this, Aren. Uh, do you have any literacy courses for the women, like against the dowry or early marriage, something like that?
Yeah. It basically depends on where community forest is. What is the social and economic and cultural context of the community? So if there is that sort of problem, then those social issues is addressed through community forest user group. So it is part of social forestry. So society is closely linked with forest resources, meaning that that group first should address the social issues, and addressing social issues ensures the collective action. They have ownership on their community, then that ownership only builds, encourage them to work, to participate, to contribute in forest management. So you have to understand it as a system. It's not only activities or program. Community forest user group or community forestry program is a systemic approach. Yeah.
Thank you. So now I think Dr. Beatriz, you raised the hand.
Yes.
Did I pronounce correctly or a little bit? Sorry. I apologize.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I was born in Cuba, and I was just thinking as you were talking, one of the concerns of the Cuban now is that they're open to tourism, that because they've been blocked out of the system, they have been able to preserve so much of the natural environment. And it's interesting because, it took them being totally isolated in order for them to preserve some of the environment. But also that I was thinking was the importance of collective action. And this is why I think it's so important, your presentation, to come to the US. Because we are so individualistic that we don't know the way back to get into this kind of culture where we think that we're interconnected and that we all should work together towards a goal. And then I was thinking when you were speaking about New Orleans, and I was thinking about how, I lived in New Orleans and I have a daughter that lives there, how disorganized it is, which prevents them from saving themselves or taking their own survival in their hands. Because everything is dependent on the government to do it. And so people themselves don't have a feeling that this is the forest, this is, the waters, the levee, all that is where we live. We're in the center. I mean, the whole framework that you provided that allow for that connection, for people to feel this is our forest, this is our, like the word that you use, the wound. And I know that we're so far from that because individualism has swallowed us. We have become very Western in our thinking. And so this kind of collective action, which is so much needed in our communities, not only in terms of the environment, but just collective feeling in the neighborhoods, when we face gentrification, or when we face any problem. And that's a painful experience to see that happen. Because without collective action, there's no transformation. I mean, you have the evidence there, you can see, okay? How the fact that you took this, you said no to Westernization, you said no to individualism, and took a path that we're together, we're collective here, and the results. It was amazing for me. It was, I think even spiritual, if I want to say that, that there's hope, and it is, and feeling connected to each other, and that whatever do, it affects us. And I think that the case in Nepal is what we need to hear. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Beatriz. Yes.
So,
I'll just add that
Prabin,
Dr.
please.
Beatriz Morales
Yeah.
Faba is part of our ADW program. I'm so proud of her, and she contributes so much to
So-
understanding the connections that we were talking about. So
Yeah.
thank you, Dr. Beatriz Faba.
Prabin?
Yeah,
You want to-
in the same line, I want to just add is the beauty of our community forestry, as I already mentioned, is collective action. And the interesting thing is my interest, my need as a user, and another user need and interest is different. We are different, we are in differentiated society. One is from rich households, one is from poor households, one represent lower caste, another represent higher caste, one is male, one is female, one is Dalit, one is higher caste, Brahmin, Kshatriya. So in this heterogeneous society, we have different need and interest, right? But we are working for common interest in forest management. So the question is how these social differentiation has been interconnected in resource management. So basically, in some in earlier slide, as I rightly mentioned, that we first focused ourselves in identifying and building the local level institution. We focused on building institution, and building institution always needs security. So that security, we try to address that security issue from devolving the rights to the people. We recognize them that you are the owner of this forest. You should have rights to manage this forest. So that ownership and that devolution of rights to community actually help to organize those heterogeneous group for collective interest. So it took very long time. It took very huge investment of resources, investment of time, and we are also unique in the world in terms of our culture, in terms of our cultural schooling. Actually, we have very embedded, deep rooted culture that guide us to come in one platform in case of crisis. So that cultural, socio-cultural context is also one of the opportunity, one of the benefits that we have. So all these things actually made us successful in terms of these participatory community-based approach. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Great. Before going to another question, I would like to ask my colleague Kausar. Kausar, is there anything in the chat box? Can you see any question or anything? Kausar? Kausar, are you there?
Yes, I'm checking.
Hmm.
People thanked, and actually, most of them thanked and appreciated the presentation.
Great.
Should I read them?
Eh? One appreciation should go to the presenter, or at least one appreciation he should read. Eh,
Could I ask one question, if it's allowed? If I don't want to hog the show, definitely, but if nobody else has a question, I really love the idea of the FICO fund, because it said, you know, it indicated that there was advocacy, conflict resolution, but the fun part of it was really important to me. And I was wondering if these community organizations come together, not just the platform of governance as a very serious business, but as something that we love to do and we enjoy and have fun with. I just wanted to throw that out because I loved that, you know, the short info that you gave us, that slide. Thank you.
Yeah. You pointed out very interesting and right thing, Dr. Parekh. So the FECO fund, actually the initiation of FECO fund was to encourage communities in building community forest user groups. Their role initially was to aware communities on the legal and social aspects of community forest user groups, and slowly they become very strong federation of community forestry. Now the FECO fund, which full form is Federation of Community Forest Users Nepal, all the community forest user groups who are legally registered and handed over as community forest user groups, they are a member of FECO fund. And FECO fund is very strong institution. Even sometimes they are strong than the government. They have very strong influence in policy making process. So now, if in some cases, if government want to actually cut back some rights of people, then FECO fund come to agitation, right? So and government cannot go against FECO fund, because in terms of numbers, they represent 35% of the population. And in terms of issues, in terms of rights, also, they represent communities' voice. They talk about communities' livelihood and forest restoration. So if government thoughts about changing some policies, because some discourse on community forestry, on policies that's actually time and again comes in Nepal, is actually government have granted or actually devolve many rights to the community. So they are now autonomous body, and they have autonomous power to do decision by themselves. So government have no decisive roles than the technical roles. So in that case, the forest technicians, when they reflect on their roles, they sometimes thought about taking back some rights of the people, of the community forest user groups. In that scenario, the FECO fund come to the front. So it's becoming very strong federation of community forest user groups, and they do facilitate the policy things, and also they are now discussing on providing the technical support to the community forest user groups. Yeah.
So they are representing 35% of the population, and this population is the voter also.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's the
yeah, it's right. So in now in local government, most of the leadership come from community forest user groups or from FECO fund. So they are building local the socio political institutions as well. So everything is connected with politics. You have to think or look every social thing through political perspectives as well. So even we can directly distinguish or even substantiate how the role of FECOFON, the community forest user groups, is actually supporting, encouraging local leaders to represent local government and different political positions.
Right. Thank you. Dr. Omar Faruk from University of Chittagong, Bangladesh, raised his hand to ask some question. Dr. Omar Faruk Russel, please introduce yourself and ask the question. Then I am coming after him. I am coming to Aren. Again, you raise the hand. Dr. Omar Faruk? Yes.
It's been written here that Dr. Omar Faruk Russel has been disconnected and he wants to join again.
Okay.
Dada, I seek your attention, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dada, just he talked with me that he disconnected from the meeting. He already applied for connection. Kindly join to him.
Yes, he connected. He connected.
Okay.
Dr. Omar Faruk Russel, now you can ask the question.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Utpal Dotto. So at first, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to the Progotir Jatree and Mr. Utpal Dotto for inviting me and to give me chance to say something about it. And then Mr. Prabin for his nice presentation. So basically, I have some questions. I know that Mr. Prabin, I went there in Tribhuvan University in 2014, and one of your colleague, maybe from the Department of Botany, Dr. Shongita, she invited us, and I also visited your city, Pokhara, very nice.
Great.
And I know that Mr. You know, I know that in Nepal, more than 6,000 maybe flowering plant you have in your country. And so from your presentations, I'd like to ask few questions about it. For the community forestry, how did you select the species? I mean, from the more than 6,000 flowering plants species you have. So for the community forestry, how did you select the species? What kind of species you are selecting for the community forestry? And question number 2, I know that you have many medicinal plant species as well. So did you select any medicinal plants for the preparation of herbal medicines or for exporting or importing the raw materials from one country to another country in the community forestry? And the last question is, I know in my country, we have also VCF, Village Community Forest. And in our research, we saw that the VCF means managed by the local people, the species richness, diversity index, every index are good than the managed forest by the government or Bangladesh Forest Department. Another important thing is that indigenous communities, those who are living in the hill tract or the mountains, they are another own techniques to manage the forest, and their species diversity index more high than our local community. So in Nepal, I know there are many indigenous communities also. So in village community forest or in your country community forest, is there any involvement of the indigenous communities from your country? And if there is involvement, so how they run the community forestry? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Omar. Interesting questions. So first I will address the last question, the involvement of indigenous community. Yes, we do have traditional indigenous community living across Nepal. And they are living in mixed community, right? So usually the households of indigenous community is living in mixed community. Some of the indigenous communities are also living very close to the forest. So if the forest patch, they are living very close to the forest patch, then the division forest office and that indigenous community discuss in terms of area of the forest, in terms of number of communities. We actually try to consolidate and minimize the conflicts, because there are several communities living around the forest, and based on the need and interest of those community, we hand over the community forest user group. So that indigenous community, if are the forest dependents and they want to manage that forest, they can get that forest patch as community forest user groups. But other community living around that forest should not claim that forest, and there should be other enough forest close to other communities so that they can be part of the community forest user groups. So these basic things are taken into considerations before handing over the forest patch to those indigenous community. But indigenous people have rights to claim forest management rights. So there is no any differentiation based on their identity. And we encourage those indigenous people because they have the skills and the ideas of managing forest since generations. So we encourage, we actually capacitate them with some science, some technical knowledge, and both their traditional knowledge to manage forest. So this is how we address the issue of indigenous community. And in usually in mixed communities, both the indigenous people and other households of people come together and form a community forest user groups. But in terms of resource sharing, in terms of addressing their need and interest, the indigenous community might need, indigenous community need and interest might differ from other communities. So in that respect, their need and interest is addressed through community forest user groups, as per the mentioned rights they have. So these all things have addressed the issues of indigenous rights in forest management. In terms of species selection, so it is typically based on the technical assessment. While we develop forest operation plan, we do assessment of flora and fauna of the forest patch. So based on that assessment, we categorize different species. Basically, our focus is on timber management in terms of lowland terai. In terms of mid hills and high hill regions, we basically focus on non-timber forest product.
Your sound. Prabin, check this.
Okay. Yeah, it's okay now.
Now.
So it basically depends on the nature of the forest. We do forest assessment. We do assessment of flora and fauna, and we do we develop operational plans, and we mention all the forest resources and how it can be managed. But our major focus in lowland terai is on timber management, and in mid hills and high hills is on non-timber forest products, high value medicinal plants, and other non-timber forest products. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
okay,
you.
okay.
Shams.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russel. You will get chance again.
Okay.
Shams Uddin actually raised his hand.
Okay, thank you. giving me the chance again. Mr. Prabin, we know the community forestry provides lots of goods and services. Yeah, some services are short-term services like intermediate products, and some are long-term, means after felling of the trees.
Yeah.
My just curiosity is to know who gets benefits from the community forestry. Is there any benefit sharing agreement, or only the community user groups enjoy all the benefits, or forest department? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the 100% of the benefits goes to communities, but in terms of timber and high value medicinal plants, if community forest user group thought that the need of timber in community forest user group is sufficient, then they can sell that timber to other community forest user groups, other communities. First, they have to sell that to other community forest user groups or other communities. And if other communities also they have enough timber, or they do not demand, they have no demand on timber, then they can sell to other districts, and based on that sale, they get the income, and those income they have to invest back to their community.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome.
Dr. Russel, you have another question, I guess. We are now very close to the end. So Dr. Russel, you can ask your question. Dr. Omar Faruk.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks again. So I got the information from the key person. So the question is that, so you are selecting based on the mountain system or the hill areas, but another question is that did you select any, you emphasize any native species or exotic species?
Yeah.
For the community forest, yeah. What kind of species you are selecting? Again, I mean, native or exotic? Because in our country, we saw that some exotic species are very, very harmful for our environment, local environment. So we are not currently selecting those species. How about Nepal?
Yeah, we give priority to native species as well. You have to look on the objective of forest management. Right, so in lowland Tarai, our objective is to manage timber, because we have very high value timber species, sal, Soria robusta, and it have very high value, and we manage those timber species for generating income and revenue in terms of Tarai. If forest have some native species, and that species, we first study the usefulness of that species, and we try to develop more heterogeneous forest composition, and based on that objective, we try to select those native species. In terms of exotic species, as you mentioned, you are right. So most of the exotic species have some harmful effects on forests. Actually, we have also have some evidence in some national parks of Nepal, the rampant increasing of exotic species and damaging the forest habitat. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Mr. Prabin. So against Dr. Utpal Dada, means big brother. Again, thank you for inviting me. And I again express my sincere gratitude on behalf of Effective Creation on Human Opinion, ECO. This is one non-development social organizations. Basically, we are doing research on medicinal plants and plant diversity in our country. So again, all of you are welcome to my country, to my university. And I am also associate professor working in the Department of Botany, University of Chittagong, Bangladesh. Thank you, Progotir Jatree.
Thank you, Russell. Yes, I also, on behalf of you, invite everybody to visit Bangladesh. Nice country. So now, one question actually you missed, I think. Well, not missed, I think you didn't mention. There is PES, Payment for Ecosystem Services. Is there any provision for that?
Yeah, we do have some provision, but actually it is initiated by some conservation areas, actually in some part of Nepal, and not basically in community forest user groups, but in some conservation areas. It basically the idea is the upper community living in the upper side of the landscape, and the resource management is doing in the lower side of the landscape. Then that is the effect of the activities of the communities in the upper side have some positive and both negative impact on the conservation area. So based on that impact, there is some mutual understanding and mutual agreement. Like the community in the upper stream have to carry some conservation activities which supply the benefits to the lower conservation area, and those conservation area managed in the lower side have to pay some amount or some benefits should be flow that comes out of managing that conservation area to the upper community. So there is some mechanism in conservation area and in also in some protected forest areas, but not it is not institutionalized in community forest user groups.
Good. Kausar, is there anything in the chat box? Kausar, can you check it again?
All right. Okay. I'm just reading 1 to 2. Mr. Murshidul Hakim says, great presentation. Ms. Aren Bonds, so interesting. Thank you. And then Ms. Pushpa Parekh, thanks, Dr. Bhusal. I'd like to get interdisciplinary resource suggestions for inclusion in my courses, especially books, videos, podcasts, etc. That's it. Nice. Another person, Mr. Omar Faruk. Nice session. I'd like to ask. He has already asked anyway. Right.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Mr. Murshidul Hakim Shubro, are you there? Dr. Ranajit Dastidar, do you have any question? Anyone?
No, Utpal, not at this moment.
No, not at this moment.
It's very interesting, very informative. I'm getting interested. I'm listening to it. Although I missed some of the discussions because I was traveling over a scooter, so it was very difficult for me to understand everything at the moment. But I was looking at the slides, so I could get some idea of it. But it is very informative, very interesting, and I convey my sincere thanks to Mr. Prabin Bhusal, as well as you and Progotir Jatree for arranging this interesting session.
Thank you, Dr. Dastidar. I appreciate your comments. Murshidul Hakim Shubro, are you there? Aren, she actually, I think she left. So I think we have to wrap up now. So if anyone have any last comments, 1 minute, Dr. Parekh, Dr. Beatriz, or anyone, last comments, then we can.
Yes. May I raise one more question? Okay. My question to Mr. Prabin Bhusal is that, is the system, community management system, is it political discourse and political regime neutral? or is it political regime specific? That is, whether could it be possible to introduce during the period of kingdom or different political system, or if if your political system changes after a few years or after a decade, would that remain to be successful or not? Or my basic question is the system related to the political regime and class as well?
Yes.
Yes, very interesting question. So yes, we can have analysis of political perspectives on development of this community forestry program also, because in 1990s we were moving from unitary system to multi-party democratic system, right? So we were more moving towards more protection oriented forest management to community people based forest management. So there was a change in political system from unitary political system to multi-party democracy. So the kingship was removed and we moved to democracy. So in that time frame, our community forest approach was initiated. So if you critically analyze through the political economic perspective, then yes, you can find some substantive evidences on linking this initiation of this participatory forestry and changing political governance in the country. And yes, and as recently we moved to Federal Republic Nepal in 2015, and after that we have very strong local government, and that local government now are demanding rights in managing resources, revenue, and income coming from community forest user groups. So in these two evidence, we can directly look the political perspectives of resource management, and obviously we can say that the national government system has direct impact on its resource management. So everything is connected with politics, and the community forestry is not far.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think Dr. Dastidar is satisfied, right? So
yes, yeah, right.
Yes.
I would like to think that you're going to have a third conference soon.
Yeah. It's with you. It's with you.
Yeah, I was waiting for this. I was very excited. I think that I want to hear more about the ethnic groups and how you've been able to get into a whole common I don't know what the word is, but collective, even though there might be ethnic divisions. And you talk about the common good and how I would like to hear more about how that process was like. It must have been incredible to achieve the results that you did. And so this is something that is very important for all of us in the world now, because we're divided so much by ethnicity and religious too. And I would like to also to know the cosmology, of each of the groups in terms of their relationship to the forest. That would be so enlightened. And I can assure you that I will share everything that was said today with my class. And so thank you so much for widening up my framework. And I want to go to Nepal too, okay?
Yeah, you are welcome, yeah. So everyone is welcome to visit Nepal.
Nice country. So I guess we don't have any more questions or comments. Dr. Parekh, do you want to say anything or no? So we can. Kausar, do you have anything?
Thank you.
Yes.
If you want, I just wanted to say that I'm closely connected to Nepal. My mother actually studied in Tribhuvan University. through a kind of a correspondence course, but we all went to Nepal for her graduation. We were little kids. And so thank you. I have that fun moment, you know, because I feel we all work so hard. We all do the right thing, at least try to. And at some points, we need to have these beautiful memories that make us feel whole. And your presentation helped me think in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Parekh. Kausar?
I want to say about I like the presentation very, very much. At the same time, since two of my children, they're students of environmental science, so I'm really feeling very much encouraged. And last time I went to India and I was visiting Mirik and a few other places. Then I felt like to go to Nepal, but I'm yet to go there. I feel like I hope to visit Nepal someday.
You must visit Nepal to see the forests and hills.
Yeah.
Yes, mountains. Yes, Pokhara is the nice.
So Utpal got afraid while climbing the mountain, right?
Yeah, right. But we have a what it is called. We thought to go more inside, right? There is a nice place. We have to walk one day or like that. Hike. Yes, we have a plan for that. Still, I have that plan. So I think we can conclude the session today. It is 1.5 hour. Thank you, to Prabin, responding me, and the others also, the participants. I think you enjoyed the session. So this session will continue. That Dr. Beer. Dr. Faba said that we have another session with African diaspora in late October or first week of November. That they are actually will see the uh, climate change issues and other things in African perspective, African countries perspective, and of course we will continue this session because it is helpful for us to understand each other, to know each other, and the situation of the country. Some issues I know that it is not familiar by others of this part of the world, like Nepal's socio-economic situation, condition, etc. Again, for Asian people, the African situation, or Latin American or Cuban situation, etc. So we know each other. It is the pandemic situation. We are close now. We can learn more and more. Now I want to conclude this session again thanking Prabin Bhusal. I we will invite you again to know more about the ethnicity issues. I think that is important for everybody of us, how you are integrating ethnic people with these common goals and even the hierarchy system you are managing, the hierarchy system of the Nepal. We know it's in Indian subcontinent, hierarchy system is very strong. Brahmin and Dalit and other.
It needs more sociological perspective.
Exactly.
So I can try. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So thank you again. Thank you, the participants. I will later on. I will give it to our YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel, Progotir Jatree YouTube channel. You can listen it again. So I want to close this session with one Cree Indian proverb. It said, "Only when the last tree has died and the last river been poisoned and the last fish been caught, we will realize we cannot eat money." I think we have to realize that we cannot eat money. Thank you very much, everybody. See you, everybody again. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you and namaste from Nepal. Thank you all. Thank you, Utpal Dada.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.